Hey everyone, welcome to the Mighty Books Podcast, where we sit down and chat with mighty authors about their books, message, writing successes, struggles, and other relevant authorship topics. I'm your host, Ryan M. Oliver, author of the Beasts of Men and Gods series. Now let's get started on today's chat. This episode's featured author is Patrick Snow. Patrick Snow is an international best-selling author, professional keynote speaker, publishing, speaking, and book marketing coach. He first discovered his gift for speaking at the age of 17 while giving the pre-game speeches to his high school football team. Since then, Patrick has electrified more than 3,500 audiences on 4 continents to achieve their individual and organizational destinies. As a publishing coach, he has mentored more than 1,200 clients throughout the world to successfully publish their books. Many of these clients have also gone on to become speakers, coaches, and consultants as well. Patrick's Destiny message has been widely recognized in the media, including the New York Times and Forbes magazine. His book, story, and family photo was also featured as a cover story in a 2002 issue of USA Today. Patrick is the author of many books, including the international bestseller Creating Your Own Destiny, which has sold upwards of 1 million copies in 5 languages and 108 countries worldwide since 2001. This book and his second book, The Affluent Entrepreneur, have both been purchased by John Wiley & Sons in New York and published under their imprint. Originally from Michigan, Patrick graduated from the University of Montana in 1991. He lived in the Seattle area for more than 20 years until 2013, when he achieved his lifelong dream and moved to beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. Please join me in welcoming the Dean of Destiny, Patrick Snow. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another installment of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today, my wonderful guest is the Dean of Destiny himself, Patrick Snow. Patrick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thank you for having me on your program. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. So let's just jump right into this wonderful interview. What is the title of your book?
Well, my first book is titled Creating Your Own Destiny. The second book is The Affluent Entrepreneur. And the third book is Boy Entrepreneur. And then I've got about 3 or 4 or 5 other books in the works that I haven't actually had time to create. I've also published 26 audiobooks on Audible titled, it's a 26 book series titled Becoming a Best-Selling Author. And so that's all about writing and publishing and book marketing and speaking. But I guess I got started in this industry 20 some odd years ago with my first book, Creating Your Own Destiny. And that's the one that we've really focused on selling and marketing all over the world.
Yeah, I have read your book, Creating Your Own Destiny, and it is a fabulous book. It cross-references a lot of different things from, goes through the gambit holistically as a person, how to elevate yourself, how to literally create your own destiny, paving your way to what you want in life, which I thought was very inspirational when I first was introduced to you via the Mary West Network, actually, which is, I think you partner with them as well, yes?
Yeah, Mary West and I have been running together for about, 18 years or so.
Wow.
Funny story, I posted a business card of my book on a grocery store in Poulsbo, Washington, many, many years ago. And she pulled that card down and asked me to join her networking group. And I was traveling all over the country speaking. And I said, I'm sorry, you can't really join your group, but I can send you a free book if you want. So I sent her a book. And then she went to my website, and on the website, she could determine that she could buy books at, discounted price and sell them at full price.
Yeah.
So then she called me maybe a couple of weeks later and said, I read your book in 3 hours and I've got $750 check I want to drop off to your house. And then I thought to myself, maybe I should reconsider joining that networking group.
Yeah.
And then one thing led to another. And then she's been representing me and doing sales and marketing and promotions for me for years. But she's an incredible person and one of my favorite people on earth.
Yeah, she is fabulous. She connects so many people to people you wouldn't have met normally. And so that's amazing that you got to, that you connected with her. She's a wizard in that aspect.
Yeah. And I think she's the one. No, did she introduce you and I, or was that somebody else?
Well, so Janae Broxton and I were friends from toddlers.
Okay.
And I knew she worked with Usborne Books, Usborne Books, excuse me. I said, she's in the book biz. Let me ask her. And so when I said, hey, I'm looking at publishing, she goes, one moment, please. And finds and gets me in contact with Mary West, who then in turn got me in contact with you.
Okay, so
So
that's the missing link right there.
yes,
Yeah.
right there. And so it's just the power of networking is absolutely stellar,
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. So tell us in your own words about creating your own destiny. Like what started that? What did you want to accomplish with the book?
Well, I would say that most people don't believe it's possible to take charge of their life, to become the captain of the ship, the creator of their destiny, to determine their fate. I'm a firm believer that we have that freedom, that flexibility, that burning desire deep down inside to pre-plan our future and then execute that plan to achieve our dreams, goals, and visions.
Mhm.
So the book Creating Your Own Destiny is meant to be a roadmap as to how to get exactly what you want out of life. But yet the problem is so many people have given up on their dreams, their goals, and their visions, and they've settled for a life of mediocrity. And I'm trying to argue the other side of the coin that says, look, you can do this, you can do that. You have to believe in yourself. You have to set goals. You have to create a game plan and execute those. Ideas without actions, I believe, are worthless. And so that's the whole process, the whole system, the whole goal, and that's how we do it. And that's what it's about. And there's things on overcoming your fears, balancing family and work, putting your family first, working 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at your day job, but then working 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., working on your life. So you put the 8 hours in to provide for your family, and then the other things on top of that, that's to kind of that little extra to help you achieve your dreams, goals, and visions. And sometimes that means having a side hustle, a small business on the side, and that's what we got to do. So it's a fun process. And I still find that maybe only 10% of people on earth believe it's possible because the others have given up. And so I'm really trying to work on that 90% and inspire them however I can.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I know I have learned from you as a publishing coach, my publishing coach, which is, like I said, it's fabulous to have you on here onto the podcast, talking about the book that kind of started it all. Landslide, everyone's getting and caught up in it. And a lot of people absolutely rave about you, your book, and your coaching, your speaking, which I guess leads into my next question. So other than being an author, you are a speaker and a coach. Can you talk a little bit about both of those?
Well, I took one speech class in high school and I loved it. And then I took one speech class in college and I loved it. And I probably should have got a degree in communications. Yeah. I ended up getting a lousy degree in political science instead in my at University of Montana, which is not really done much with. Right. But during these speech classes, and also even when I played sports back in high school, I was always the captain of all my teams. And my senior year, I was captain of my varsity football team, giving the pregame speech before every game. And I loved it. I love firing up the troops. The only problem is we had a pretty lousy team and we didn't win a game my senior year. Oh, no. So I don't know if I wasn't a very good speaker. We just didn't have talent. And looking back on it, I realized that we had like 2 or 4, maybe 3 athletes on the team. And you can't win with 2 or 3 athletes. No. So that kind of set me on a path that I went off, played college football, had a career-ending back injury in college. And at that point, I kind of focused my athletic discipline into my academics, into my career. I started reading voraciously, started memorizing inspirational quotes, started studying, Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and Dr. Stephen Covey and Les Brown and Tony Robbins and Mark Victor Hansen and all these big names. And they just inspired me like crazy. And I thought, I love this. I want to do more speaking. So I graduated University of Montana in 1991, moved to Seattle. Originally born and raised in Michigan, went to University of Montana and then Seattle. So I've been migrating west. And then after 21 years in Seattle, I moved to Maui, Hawaii 8 years ago. So I've continued to go west, but I think I'm stopped now. But the point of it was in my early 20s, I would moonlight on the side in my sales job, and I would go speak at churches and schools and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and FBLA and DECA and Rotary and Kiwanis. And I think between 22 and 26, I gave around 300 speeches. And I failed 300 times to get paid. I got free breakfast and free lunch and free dinner and free pens. And then being a man of faith, I finally had to come to Jesus talk. And it's like, what am I doing wrong here? Why can't I make it in this business? Why can't I go from free speaking to fee speaking? And I heard this message back from the universe that changed my life. And it was this quote. It said, if you want what others have, You must do what others have done, and you'll get what others have gotten. So I looked at my mentors, and every single one of them had successfully written and published a book. And they used that book as their platform to stand on. And then as a result of that, they were able to more successfully launch their professional speaking career.
Yeah.
So not knowing what I was doing, I spent 5 years and $20,000 writing and publishing, Creating Your Own Destiny. Finally, it was published at 31 years old. I did my first book launch party. I had no idea what I was doing. I did a live 1-hour keynote speech there. And then someone asked me, I said, well, can you speak at our real estate office? And I said, well, yeah, of course I could. And then said, we're going to have our broker call you. So they called me on Monday and they said, what's your fee schedule? And I said, fee schedule? What are you talking about? They said, how much do you want to be paid? And I said, I don't know. How about $500? And they said, great. Where do we mail the check? And I was like, oh, I should have said 1,000. I should have said 1,500. And so that kind of kicked off my professional speaking career, which was 21, 22, 23 years ago. And to date, we've done about 3,500 paid speaking engagements all over the world. And my keynote speaking fee is 25 grand. I've never been paid 25 grand, but I've been paid 20 grand, 18, 17, 16. Wow. A lot of my gigs are in the $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 range, right, depending upon their budget, how much travel is involved, and what they want.
Yeah.
So that kind of launched my professional speaking career. And then one of my mentors, Bob Moad, taught me this. He said, when you speak, business happens. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And the more and the more and more that I spoke, the more people bought my books in the back of the room. And the more people approached me and said, hey, I want to do that. I want to write a book. I want to be a speaker. I want to be a coach. I want to learn how to do these things. Can you coach me? Mm-hmm. And at the time, 20 years ago, I'm like, well, I guess I could do that. And then I realized I spent, 5 or 6 or 8 years putting the system together. So I really never planned on being a writing coach, a publishing coach, a book marketing coach, a professional speaker coach, or certainly a coaching coach. I never, grew up planning on that, but the need just created itself. And the more that I spoke, the more people came to me for coaching. So it was like, write the book to get paid, go do the paid speaking engagement. Now I'm auditioning my passion, my enthusiasm, my energy to the audience. They fell in love with the message. They want to take me home with them. So they buy the book. And now they want me to become their accountability partner. So they hire me to coach.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of this flow chart, how the whole thing works. And it all started with a book.
Yeah.
So great question.
Great answer. Fabulous answer. So being a speaker and being a coach and author, all that during COVID, how did that affect your ability to do speeches? Did that just cancel it altogether? Did you have to kind of moderate? Like, what did you do?
First off, I don't like that word COVID. I think it's a bad word. I don't think that COVID is real. And all my doctor friends tell me the whole thing that it's just a big hoax. They say it's just the flu. It's the same flu that we've had for hundreds of years. They're like, Patrick, every year in this country, 500,000 people die of the flu. Right. And most of them are people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so all of a sudden, when this flu pandemic came around, nobody was passing of the flu anymore. We went 2 or 3 years with no flu deaths. Mm-hmm. So that's why the doctor's saying, do you see where I'm coming from, Patrick? It's just the flu. Right. And I'm like, okay. So I always call it the flu, chaos. But during this flu chaos, the answer to that question is, I think I had 18 speaking engagements booked over the course of about the next 9 to 12 months. And every one of those gigs either canceled or postponed. And so that was about $100,000 in revenue just off the books like that. Wow. So I guess I just pivoted and I made an adjustment. And I'd say prior to that, I was probably 70 to 80% coach, and then 20 to 30% speaker. And living in Maui, it's probably the worst place in the world to be a professional speaker, because it's a 6-hour flight to the West Coast to speak and then 12 hours to the East Coast. And so over the last 8 years, I had been doing a little bit less speaking and always more coaching. So at the time of the 2020 crisis, I just basically went full-time, 100%, coaching. And the only speaking that I've done, I would say now, for almost 2 years, has been like doing inspirational, motivational speeches on Zoom.
Wow.
And it's very challenging to, be on stage in your suit and tie, standing up, yelling and screaming, telling stories, jumping up and down, having fun. And then all of a sudden you're giving an inspirational speech and you're sitting in your chair.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, this is so different. And then I got to keep my cat from walking in front of my screen and, whatever else. So I'm still speaking a ton, but it's just a different strategy.
Yeah.
And what I coach and teach is what Bob Melwood taught me: when you speak, business happens. So it's okay that most of these Zoom presentations are free as long as you make an offer at the end of your speech.
Yeah.
Because in business, and this is what I coach to my coaching clients, nothing happens in business between buyer and seller until an offer is made. And you, as the seller of your coaching services, need to make an offer. Mm-hmm. And the best type of an offer is a complimentary, no obligation consultation. Yeah. And that way they get to test drive you, kick the tires, sample the services. Yeah. So I guess that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's great.
But so it's all coming together.
That's fantastic. Be able to make that switch, and you had the foundation to do that. Because I know a lot of people were not able to recover or pivot as you were able to do. But it's really good that you set that foundation. You had that drive, the positivity, the motivation to change it to 100% coaching.
Well, I would tell you this. I was afraid, maybe not afraid. I was concerned 8 years ago when I moved to Maui, because I was 21, 23 years in Seattle area. First was Kirkland and then Federal Way and then Wedgwood, Seattle. And then the last 13 years on Bainbridge Island. And I built up a huge book of business in the Puget Sound region in Washington State in the Northwest. And to leave all that behind to come to Hawaii where I knew nobody. I mean, I knew a few people, but I just thought, what's going to happen to my coaching business? Are people going to leave? Am I going to still be able to do this? Right. And I realized all I needed was a phone line and internet connection. And if I had phone line and internet connection, I could work from all over the world. And then what I found out is everybody wanted to have a coach that was in Hawaii, because they thought, well, maybe this guy that lives in Maui knows what he's talking about, versus maybe if I was a coach in like Arkansas or something, not to, slam Arkansas. I'm sure it's a beautiful place. But my point of it is everybody thought that was really cool that their coach lived in Maui. Yeah. And it turned out that I really just needed phone line and email access. And so when the flu chaos of 2020 happened, I realized this is no different. It's the same thing. As long as you stay connected via internet, Zoom, social media, and obviously cell phone, you're going to be great. And that's what's kind of happened. Mm-hmm.
We are definitely on the right side of history there. If imagine 30, 40 years ago, something like that happens. And now we're like, well, what do? We just travel roadshow. Like, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, people always ask me, why do you live in Maui? My answer is because I can. They're like, what are you talking about? Oh, well, I spent, 25 plus years building my practice and building my coaching, speaking, and consulting career, that I was able to do it from home. And I started working from home, I think around 1996. Wow. And at the time, very few people were working from home. And those that did, they gained 50 pounds because the refrigerator was just like one room over. And I loved working from home because I didn't have to waste an hour each way with the commute and the stress and all of that. Yeah. And obviously I have big, huge goals and dreams and visions. So the refrigerator wasn't really an issue for me.
And I'm assuming that's how you stay positive, and you're very goal oriented. It sounds like you're very goal oriented.
Well, yeah. And one of my biggest goals is to focus on health and wellness. Excellent. Because I believe that health is the new wealth. I mean, what would you rather have? $1 billion in the bank and 2 years to live? Right. Or would you rather just make what you're making, but then have 30, 40, 50 years to be with your family? And so I just turned 53 not too long ago. And I would say in my, 30s or so, I got a little bit out of shape, a little bit heavy. Like many people, I'm a recovering sugaraholic. I had dessert after breakfast, dessert after lunch, dessert after dinner. And then pretty soon I ended up being 240 pounds. I'm like, wait a minute. And I cut that sugar, addiction out. Yeah. And I went from 240 down to 195. And I've been 195, 200 pounds for maybe 10 years now. And part of that is I'm an avid cyclist and avid hiker, work out. And to me, health and wellness is along with my family, a top priority.
Absolutely. You want to be here for as long as you can, especially if you got a great message to tell people. You want to be here to make an impact, and you can't be here making an impact if you're sick and you're tired and you're not on planet Earth anymore. So
yeah, and when you're driving and speaking and traveling all over the world, and airport to airport, and like you said, I had to give an 8-hour presentation once in Malaysia. You have to be in great shape because you can't be getting on getting tired on stage. So yeah, health and wellness is very important to me.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And you even go into it in creating your own destiny too. Like I said, creating destiny is like a whole holistic of bettering yourself one step at a time. And
well, one of my mentors, Bob Moed, another guy, I want to make sure I get his name right. He wrote the self-publishing manual.
Yes.
What is it? Dan Poynter. Yeah, Dan Poynter.
Dan Poynter.
Dan Poynter taught me, as soon as I got my book published, I think I had like $500 left in my marketing budget. And literally my entire book was funded on my credit card and also my commission payments, commission income. So I called up Dan Poynter. I said, I got $500 left in my budget. That's it. How much coaching can I buy? And he said, I'll give you 2 hours of coaching. And I tell you what, those 2 hours of coaching were the best investment in my book that I could have ever made, because he told me that the average author in their lifetime sells 250 books. And then later I learned that the Publishers Marketing Association reports that 98% of authors will not sell more than 2,000 books. And so my first month, I found a network marketing company to buy 35,000 books. And I became a best-selling author literally in 1 month time.
Wow.
Because I learned that it was easier to find one company to buy 35,000 books than it was to find 35,000 individuals, each to buy a book apiece. But my first book, I had grammar errors, spelling errors, typos. It was 10 chapters, 140 pages. I had the word freedom misspelled on the back cover, freedom with 3 E's. I don't know how that got through. But what Dan Poynter taught me was that a book is like a tree, and that every year you plant and you water and you nourish, and you do the same with your book. Every year you re-release the book in a second edition, a third edition, a fourth edition, a fifth edition, new chapters, new stories, new experiences, new testimonials, new book awards. So my book evolved over 11 years from 140 pages in softcover at 10 chapters. Now, 11 years later, it was 325 pages in hardcover with absolutely no spelling errors. And then at that point, that's when I sold the book to John Wiley and Sons in New York. And we did a 2-book deal with my second book, The Affluent Entrepreneur. But that's what I learned, that marketing a book successfully means that we spend the rest of our life promoting the book. And then we add to it, we build on it, we grow on it. And my chapter, like you mentioned, in health and wellness, that wasn't in the first edition.
Right.
Then someone said, Patrick, you missed a chapter on health and wellness. I'm like, oh yeah, if I'm to create my own destiny, that's got to be part of it. Absolutely. And then someone else said, well, Patrick, you missed a chapter on faith, and your belief in God. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's part of it too.
Yeah.
And so I added that chapter.
Yeah.
And then I added a chapter on building your business on a limited budget. And that chapter ended up being 32 pages. And then I took that chapter and I expanded that to be a whole new book titled The Affluent Entrepreneur. So I'm a huge fan of marketing your book the rest of your life. And if it's a nonfiction, self-help kind of book, then you got to update it and expand it and promote it, because it's a whole lot easier to add 1 or 2 new chapters to an existing book than to go out and write a brand new book from scratch.
No, 120% on that one.
Yeah. But in your situation, writing fiction, you can write book after book after book. As long as you got a lot of love and death in your book, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. But it takes a lot, because I love how you took, one iota of the one idea from your first book, and you can take that and just dissect it and expand upon it and make another niche for you to work with, which is amazing. So you're working on your 4th book now?
Well, I've got 3 or 4 books on hold. I got them started, 1 or 2 or 3 chapters in.
Okay.
And then life happens.
It does.
And like I said, I live in Maui, Hawaii. I love the beach. I love hiking. The biking here is out of this world spectacular. It's like the Swiss Alps, but nice weather all year round. And people here also, they've come to Maui for the beaches, but they don't realize there's 200 hiking trails that are epic and spectacular. And, Haleakala is 10,000 feet. So we go from sea level to 10,000 feet, and the West Maui Mountains right out my back door goes from sea level to, 5,000 feet. So I don't want to be in my office all day and all night, evenings and weekends. So the reason why I don't have book 4, 5, and 6, and 7 published yet is because after I put in 30 to 40 hours a week in my home office, I want to get out there and enjoy the nature and the ocean and the mountains and the biking. So yeah, I'm kind of like maybe one of those, what do you call them? A shoe cobbler or one of those shoesmiths, I don't know what they're called. People that make shoes.
A cobbler.
And,
yeah.
A cobbler.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the cobbler making shoes for everybody else, but they don't have time to make shoes for their own kids. And so I published, I think, 1,500 clients over 25 years. So I have a lot of time for everybody else's book, but it's hard to find time for my own books anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, it's said, though, it is a beautiful thing that you get out and enjoy yourself. You can't, like you said, you can't be shut in. It's not good for you. It's just not good for people to be shut in the office, working all day and all night. It's not a thing. And you have the luxury of being in Maui where there's beautiful weather, like you said, year round. Up here in Washington, as I'm sure you know, it's gray and rainy most of the time. It's a little harder for us to get out there. We try, man, it's cold.
I love the 7 months of summer there. Your summers are spectacular. The winters are a bit challenging. But the other issue that I think when we go back to health and wellness, the challenge with being a writer or the challenge with being an author is many times we spend all day long on our computer doing email, doing, Zoom calls, watching videos, doing this and doing that. And then we end up writing our books evenings and weekends. So we spend more screen time looking at the computer, which I don't really think is healthy. And I'm now on my 3rd set of prescription reading glasses, which I think is ridiculous because my vision is perfect when I'm not looking at a computer screen, and I don't wear glasses at all. But my eyes, whenever I spend too much time on the computer, they start hurting. And so I went to the eye doctor and like, well, of course, you're in your 40s, you need reading glasses. I'm like, what? So I got some reading glasses. About 3 years later, they started hurting again. Oh, you need to up your prescription. Oh, and then about 3 years later, we need to get another, reading glasses. So yeah, I really believe that's one of our challenges today with technology is that, we keep that phone with us and we're constantly looking at the screen and we're missing out on life. So I really think it's important that we, balance that, try not to be a magnet with your face on your phone evenings and weekends or early mornings. That's what I love about hiking and biking and spending time with your family. That's more important because otherwise we're going to miss our entire life and realize we spent 4 trillion hours glued to a monitor screen. And that's not the way it's meant to be.
100%. You got to experience life through your eyes, not through other people's phones and pictures. You got to experience through your eyes. And so we try to make it a point to leave the phones away and try to get off the computer as much as we can. And just experience, just be there, just be present.
And I have a lot of my clients now that know this, and now they're speaking their book into their computer. So instead of them spending 100 hours, typing out their book over 3 or 6 months on a manuscript, they will get a book outline done. And I help them with that in maybe an hour or 2. And then they'll sit down on a Saturday morning for 3 or 4 hours and they'll speak their entire manuscript into their computer and their first draft is done. So they save, 95, 100 hours of time, of course, which is better for your eyes as well.
Yes, 100%. I know my eyes started going south around the time I hit college because all of it was computer. And I noticed my eyes, I had great vision. And then all of a sudden starting to see blurry, like, what is going on here? And it had to do with the screen time. It just, that's plain and simple. Yeah. So what feedback over the course have you gotten over the course of the years? What feedback have you gotten about your Creating Our Destiny and your other books?
Well, I think one of the myths out there when you write and publish a book, and I've been blessed, I think we've sold upwards of 1 million books in 5 languages in 108 countries, plus or minus, and it's very difficult to really know exactly. But we got the book in Arabic and Spanish and Russian and Indonesian, sold the English language rights in Africa, sold the English language rights, Southeast Asia and India. And it's amazing to get testimonials from people all over the world on the book. And it's kind of hard to believe, and it's very humbling. Then, of course, they think you're this billionaire, millionaire, trillionaire, untouchable person because you've written this book. And they don't realize that, I've got the same challenges that everybody else has in life as well. Just trying to earn an honest buck to buy my kids a new pair of shoes. And thankfully, my kids are old enough now that they can buy their own shoes.
Yeah.
But my point of it is humbling. I've had one individual in Ivory Coast of West Africa. He once sent me an email and said, I read your book, Patrick, and my whole life I've been in and around civil war. And your book has taught me that I can take charge of my future and that I don't need to wave the white flag of surrender and just surrender to this tyranny and to this, brutal, country that we live in, that you've given me hope that I can follow my dreams and goals and visions. And when that happens to you, it's very humbling. And then you realize, okay, this work as an author, as a speaker, as a coach, it is your soul level mission and goal. Mm-hmm. And I'm really trying to make a difference on this planet by being a promoter of positivity and empowering people to have them go after their dreams, goals, and visions. So we've gotten tons of testimonials from all over the world. Speaking, I'm blown away at that. Sometimes you speak and you wonder, well, did I make a difference to anybody? And sometimes you don't feel like you get any feedback. Once I gave a speech to this postal service worker organization, and they had no interest in it. They didn't even believe it was possible to have goals or dreams or visions. I'm like, oh, well, they're stuck in the postal service mentality. And I know a lot of people that work for the postal service, and they just cracked up laughing when I told them that story. But there's one instance I had somebody come out of the stage, gave me a hug afterwards, and they said, Patrick, I had planned on taking my own life tonight.
Wow.
And something told me that I needed to go to your speech. And because of what I heard in your speech, I'm going to go get help. And I'm not going to take my life. And I'm going to do what I can to create my own destiny. And when that happened, just like, whoo, that's like life-changing. So this is a funny business because you just never know what seeds you're planting. You never know who you're impacting. And the other part of it is too, you've got the 10%ers that don't like your speech, that don't like your book, and they're playing Negative Nancy or Doubtful Dave, and they're quick to critique you. And then when you really get to know their critique, it just turns out they have a degree in creative writing. They have a degree in journalism. It's been their goal their entire life to write and publish a book. And so they want to poo-poo on your parade because darn it, you achieved their goal.
Right.
So they're going to try to hold you back. And so you just got to bless their heart and send them on their way. And so we see a little bit of everything, but lots of great feedback over the years.
That's excellent. That is excellent. And you have to, and it's really hard for some people to overcome that negative comment, the negative Nelly or Nancy. And you have to just dig down deep, take with it with a grain of salt. Like, thank you for your opinion. And I'm going to move on now.
Maybe Negative Nelly is a better word. Because once I said that from stage and Negative Nancy, and this woman comes up to me with her name tag and it says Nancy. She says, I don't appreciate you speaking Negative Nancy because that's my name. And I thought, wow. You're going to go there? And so well, maybe Negative Nelly is a better word because there's not many people named that.
Not that I know of.
Probably a safer, more politically appropriate.
Yeah. What was one of the most favorite or engaged groups you've ever had when you spoke? You've spoken a lot of venues. What's the most memorable, at least, that you can think of?
Well, one of the greatest things about being a professional speaker is you get to travel all over the world.
Right.
And more times than not, they're paying for air, car, and hotel. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they pay you 10, 15,000, but then you got to buy your air, car, and hotel. And so you make 12, 13, 14, after you pay it. So you're still making money. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, it has been traveling to all these different countries, meeting these different cultures. I've spoken in 15 times in New Zealand, all over the country. I've loved that. I've spoken in Puerto Rico, all over Canada. I've spoken in almost all of the 50 states. I think there's 2 that I haven't yet. Arkansas is one of those, and South Carolina is the other. Spoke twice in Guatemala in the same month. July 1st, I gave a speech, and then I had another booking July 31st. And so I ended up going home in between because I didn't want to be 31 days, in country.
Yeah.
And I met some amazing people there, and I saw the wealthiest of wealthy there, and I saw the poorest of poor there. And then, Buenos Aires was amazing, Argentina, and I took the ferry boat over to Uruguay, and that was an amazing experience because a lot of times when you go speak, it's the travel, it's the trip that you get to experience, and the speech is like maybe 3 to 5% of the excursion, and the other 3 or 4 days that you're on the road traveling, you're doing your own sightseeing things, and it's pretty awesome. And unfortunately, a lot of times you're by yourself, so you're exploring these different countries on your own, but you meet friends. And but I would say, to answer your question, probably the biggest awakening experience was for me as I spoke in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Okay.
And so I flew from, I guess I was in Seattle at the time. I flew Seattle to LA, and then LA to Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong was awesome to fly over that and see that. And then to Malaysia, and they said, "Can you speak for 8 hours?" And my answer was, well, yes, but no, I didn't want to speak for 8 hours, And I think, and I've done my bestseller publishing institute, and it's a 3-day, 30-hour event. And I'll talk for 3 days and 30 hours on writing, publishing, book marketing, speaking, coaching, consulting. But when they want me to do an inspirational, motivational keynote talk for 8 hours, I was like, are you kidding me? And I think up until that time, the longest, inspirational speech I'd ever given was like 2.5 hours with 30 minutes of Q&A.
Yeah.
And so of course I said yes, that I can do it. But I learned from one of my mentors a strategy, and that is to take the amount of time that you speak and cut it in half. So prepare 4 hours of material for an 8-hour speech, and then do 4 hours of Q&A. And so what I did was I would talk for like an hour or 45 minutes. I said, okay, we're going to take a break. And then if any of you guys have any of these questions on anything I talked about, get your little Marriott pad with your pen and write down your questions. And on the break, bring those questions up to me and put them on the front desk. And then after the break, I'll start by answering these questions. So I'd get 20 to 30 little sheets of paper, each time after the break. And I'd start each new segment answering 20 to 30 minutes of questions. And so the 8-hour speech went like that. But I was getting questions like, well, what's it like to live in America when everybody's got a gun in their back pocket? I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, we've seen those Hollywood movies. There's guns and car chases and explosion, and everybody's carrying a gun. And I'm like, my dad took me hunting as a kid, but I don't have a gun. Yeah. And I know very few people that have guns. And I would say most people aren't driving around in their car in America, with a gun, maybe in some parts of the country, but not most parts. But, things like that. And then they were of the belief that, all these movie stars, that the movie stars hung out with us and we knew who they were. And I'm like, no, we don't know these people, And so, but they learned about America from the movies. And so they had all of these questions. What's it like about this? And what's it like about that? And, in some of these countries, they don't have cars. And here in this country, we have 2 and 3 automobiles. Everything they do is by foot or by bike. And I ride bike for exercise. I don't ride bike to get from point A to point B, A lot of these places, like in Peru, I can't think of Lima, Peru, there's high rises after high rises after high rises, and every building, all these apartments, everybody lives in, buildings that are 30, 40, 50 stories tall. And they're just jammed together. And then, or they're in tin shacks kind of out in the, the distance.
Right.
And so, to have that white picket fence, the American dream with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and a fence and a garage, it's just a whole different life. So I think the best thing about speaking is to travel the world, get to know these other people, understand that they too love God. They too have a big heart. They too are caring people. And they too are concerned about their family and their ability to provide. But when you go there and you lose all those comforts that we have, And then you come back to the United States and so grateful to be able to brush your teeth with the water, so grateful to be able to have a full refrigerator. So you just have so much gratitude about all the blessings that we have in this country when you travel and speak all over the world.
Yeah, that's
so we're
eye-opening. Yeah, very eye-opening and humbling.
Yeah, we realize that even though many of us, I lived paycheck to paycheck for a lot of years, but even paycheck to paycheck in US is more wealthy than 98% of the people in the world,
Oh yes. I work with a lot of different people from all walks of life, and they have the same thing. They have people who retire in like the Philippines, for example. People who work here for their entire life go and retire in the Philippines, and they are wealthy. I mean, almost sickeningly wealthy over there.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. It's, you ask those questions like, well, what's it like over there? Same thing that you got. We start asking people who are from different parts of the country, well, do you guys have this there? Well, yeah, we've got this there. We just don't have a lot of it. Like, oh, okay. It's interesting. It's interesting to hear. We all think we're like so different, but we're actually not.
Well, what's amazing is there's a lot of Filipinos here in Maui and a lot of Asian folks in Maui. And some of my Filipino friends are my best friends in the world. And they tell me that, like, when you're hungry, you just go outside and you catch a chicken and then you break its neck and then you put it in the boiler and then you're having chicken for dinner.
Yeah.
And so there is actually a lot of that in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And Kauai's got chickens everywhere. And I know we're getting off the subject matter, but I remember one time riding my bike and I just smelled this god awful stench. And I was riding my bike in this kind of, maybe lower income neighborhood. And this stench was god awful. And I kind of peeked through the fence, and they had a pig that they went up country and shot this hog or this boar. And then they stuck it on a metal thing. And then they took a blowtorch and they were cooking the pig with a blowtorch. And then, I was talking to my buddy about that and like, well, yeah, that's how we do it in the Philippines. That's how you do it. That's how you cook. And I'm like, wow. So I know that's off the topic, but I guess what I'm saying is this is the beautiful thing about being a speaker is you get to travel all over the world and you get to experience things. And also Indonesia, there's a lot of terrorism in Indonesia, a lot of, especially around Jakarta. I had an opportunity to go there to speak and I just didn't feel safe. So I didn't go. I sold a ton of books in Nigeria, tons of books there. And they wanted me to come to Nigeria. But, the people on the inside in the speaker industry that they told me to stay away. And I'm like, why? Because you might get kidnapped. And then they're going to ask for my, for my family for millions of dollars to get me back. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to Nigeria, And so there's that. You really have to be cognizant of where you were. In Guatemala, they said when someone comes up to you and puts a gun in your face, just give them your watch, give them your wallet, just give it to them. Because if you ask questions or if you resist, they shoot you. Like in the United States, someone pulls a gun, you get into a debate, you get into an argument. You're like, no, this is not going to happen. I'm keeping this. But there they say they just like shoot you. And so everybody warned me. And so I was eating lunch one time and I came out of this restaurant and all of a sudden these guys started following me. And I like took off walking faster and faster and faster. They were getting closer and closer and closer. And I jumped into this other restaurant and I just hung out there and had like a 3-hour dinner or whatever to avoid that. So again, it's beautiful and wonderful to travel all over the world. But it really makes you feel blessed for what we have here.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Those are incredible stories. Those are absolutely incredible stories. And with that, do you put, I'm assuming you do with revisions with your books, do you put any other of these stories in there as you go on, as you experience them?
Well, I will tell you, as a professional keynote speaker, the worst speakers in the world, they teach and preach, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. Mm-hmm. That's how they talk on stage and everybody gets bored. So I learned as a young speaker that to succeed in this business, you need to be humorous, entertaining, and inspirational. So I call my speaking formulas H plus E plus I equals the $. Mm-hmm. Humor plus entertainment plus inspiration equals money. So absolutely, yes, I'm constantly trying to write books through storytelling, and I'm constantly trying to speak through storytelling. And for those listening to this, I'm going to share my 5-step writing formula for telling stories, and also my 5-step speaking formula for telling story. And it's the same formula. So in order to hook in the reader or to hook in the audience, we got to do these 5 steps. Number 1, we got to ask a question, or 2 or 3 or 4. Number 2, we got to introduce the subject matter and then define it. Number 3, we got to tell the story. And some of the stories about us in our life, or the stories could be about Gandhi or Buddha or Jesus or Christopher Columbus or Colonel Sanders, or it could be about mom or dad or grandma and grandpa, or maybe your buddy from high school. So tell the story. Sometimes you, sometimes about somebody else. Some of them are living, some of them are dead. And then number 4, ask the same question a different way to engage that audience or to engage the reader. So you're flipping the script now that I've shared with you all of this. Now, how does this apply to your life, your obstacle, your adversity? And then step number 5 in the writing of the book, write out your answers in the exercise lines as provided below. Or if it's a speech, get out a pen and paper and jot this down. And so as a writing and publishing coach for nonfiction, I'm a huge advocate for having reflective exercise questions in the book. And the reason why is if you don't have exercise questions in the book, people are going to read your book and then they're going to give it to their friend who gives it to their friend who gives it to their friend. So maybe 50 people read it, but only 1 person bought it. Whereas if you put exercise questions in the book, people put their own dirty laundry, their drama, their sorrows in the book. And then they're like, oh, Ryan, here's this amazing book, but you can't have mine. You need to go out and buy your own. Wow. So now you end up selling 100 times more books that way. And at the bottom line, you don't want anybody just to read your book. You want people to diary your book, to journal your book, to notebook your book. And if they do that, they're going to keep the book in their handbag or their purse, or their backpack for 6 months or a year. If they just read it in 3-4 hours, they're going to put it back on the shelf. So exercise questions are a huge, huge way to really elicit, the points from stories, and then to really help people journal. And we're getting back to that story concept. Mm-hmm. As a speaker, we should never, under any circumstance, memorize our speech. And the reason why, if you try to memorize it, like today on this interview, I had no clue what we're going to talk about. I didn't know what your questions were. And we're just having fun. And that's what people like. Yep. So as a professional speaker, you should memorize your bullet points. And then every bullet point, there's a story attached.
Yes.
So it's bullet point story, bullet point story, bullet point story, bullet point story. And when you do your PowerPoint, every one of those slides are going to be one of your points.
Yep.
And then each of those points, when you see it, it's like, oh, that's that story of this time, or, oh, that's that story of that time. And that's how you trigger it. So that way you speak from your heart with passion and energy and persuasion. But yeah, stories are so important.
And they engage so well. I mean, I've moved back into the teaching, I guess the, speaking business, essentially, with what I'm doing. I'm speaking to people who are trying to learn to stay alive at work. And
that's a really important thing.
It really is. It really is. And it's funny because you come into it and you realize how many stories you actually have that maybe, that can inspire or teach people some caution. Yeah. And it's incredible at how quickly you start telling a story. The heads go from, kind of looking at their lap to snapping up and looking at you like, what is this about? What is this about? So that engagement is absolutely crucial to getting a point across.
Not all you want to keep alive at work, you want to keep your fingers and your toes and, keep your health. So good point.
Yeah, we've got dozens of stories, unfortunate stories, but dozens of stories that hopefully in the end will teach others to not do silly things or be extra careful. Take an extra 5 minutes to do stuff. Yeah. So let's see. So you are in my mind, you are a very successful author. What does success look like to you? If you like right now in the next 10, 20 years, what does success look like to you?
Well, to me, I think success is having a deep network of family and friends, people that you love, that you care about, that they love and care about you, that you can call them, email them, hang out with them. To me, having a big family network of friends is success. Also, to me, success is freedom, meaning that you can wake up each morning and you can roll out of bed and go off to work, or you can roll back over and go back to sleep knowing that all your bills are paid for.
Yeah.
And so I've been very, very blessed. And I'm not where I want to be. I've got a long ways to go. My goal, and I'll just put this out there, is $1 million a year with no overhead and no employees. And I know lots of people that are making millions and millions of dollars a year as gross income, but then after they pay all their employees and their overhead and their office space and all their company, cars or whatever else, they make very little of the profit and they keep on the take home. So I really love this idea of being a one-man guy, a one-woman guy. I mean, a one woman, if you're a man or woman, whatever, meaning that it's just you work from home. And by the way, there's no misunderstanding. I know that I'm a man. So I just want to put that out there.
I'm really glad that you know that.
Yeah, I know the definition of a man and the definition of a woman.
Right.
As a side note. But my point of it is, it's about freedom. And 19 years ago, almost 20 years ago, I quit my last job. And I said, I'm done. And they thought it was crazy. They said, this is the biggest mistake you're ever going to make. And I said, are you kidding me? I've already got speaking engagements. I got coaching clients. My books are selling because I wrote my books and I did all of that while I was building a day job. So I wrote in the morning, the evening, the lunch hours, weekends. And so to me, success means that you have freedom to run your own life, freedom to do whatever you want. This morning before this call, I just did a short 17-mile bike ride. It took me about an hour and 15 minutes, but rode down to the ocean. There's a big, huge trail that goes behind the airport, and it was an awesome hour-and-a-half workout. The other day, I wanted to go for a hike. So at 2:00, I looked up, I don't have anyone to call. So at 2:00, I checked out of the office, and my fiance, Amy, and we went up and climbed the mountain behind us. So freedom is a big part of that. But then the third pillar of that is health and wellness. And we briefly talked about that earlier, because you can be successful in the monetary, standpoint, but if you don't have your health and wellness, then you're not in good shape. So yeah, those are my three things. I think, how would answer that question.
That is a absolutely wonderful answer to that question. I absolutely love that. Freedom is, I think people take it for granted. I really do. Just talking with folks working at where I work, they don't know how to be free. I feel like it's almost, they're just caged forever as a employee.
Well, people think that slavery ended with Abraham Lincoln of the Emancipation Proclamation of freeing the slaves, but ultimately we as a society have become enslaved to our employer. And then we've been enslaved to the banking, system, and then been enslaved to our mortgages, been enslaved to credit cards. And the goal is to break all of those chains to everybody. And when you're in that position, it's just a lot of peace of mind.
Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot of courage and talk and planning, but you just take that first step. And the first step would definitely be, for a lot of people, reading Creating Your Own Destiny is definitely a good start to that. What any suggestions do you have for someone who is looking to publish?
Well, I think the first thing they got to decide is figure out what their passion is. In your situation, you're passionate about, fantasy adventure series, science fiction and fantasy. That's, something that you've been passionate about. You probably read all those books as a kid. And then in your teenage years, you did the Harry Potter, thing or whatever else. Me, I like the movies, but I don't read the books. And so that's not my top, passion. For me, I was all in sports and personal growth and development and quotes, and became a quote junkie and whatever else. So for me, it's all been about that. Right. I think what we got to do is understand that we must write about whatever it is that we're most passionate about. I had a friend who was not my client who wrote a book about golf. He called me up one day, and as he called me up, he was complaining about his book. And I'm like, what's the big deal about your book? I mean, what are you thinking about? What's the big deal about your book? And he said, I can only get speaking engagements at golf courses and country clubs because that's what I've written about is golf. And I'm like, well, why did you write a book about golf? I said, what's the big deal about golf courses? He said, I absolutely hate the subject matter of golf. I'm like, well, why did you write that book? And he said, I thought I could make a lot of money doing it. And so I would say don't follow the carrot of where you think you can make a lot of money writing about something. I think what you got to do is write about whatever you're most passionate about. And that would be your best advice that I can give. In my situation, the way that this came down was in my early years, I wasn't getting paid to speak. And I remember once from Bainbridge Island, I had a 1-hour speaking engagement in Yakima on the other side of the mountains. And you know the distance, it's probably a 3-hour drive with a ferry boat. And so I loved speaking so much that I got out of work early, 2:30, 3 o'clock. I drove over the pass. I got there by 6 or 6:30, was there for a 7 o'clock speech. I spoke maybe 7 to 9. And it was to Mary Kay Cosmetics, to a bunch of, Mary Kay, makeup women or whatever. And they're awesome people. I love them. They're one of my favorite audiences. And then it was 9:30, 10 o'clock when the meeting was done. I was starving. So the guy that came with me, we went to Denny's and had like pancakes and eggs at like 11 o'clock at night because we were starving because we didn't get dinner. And then it's 11 o'clock at night and I got to work the next day. So we get in the car and we drive back from 11 until 2:30. We get to Seattle and I missed the last ferry boat to Seattle. So I got to drive all the way around from Seattle down through Tacoma, up the Olympic Peninsula, back to Bainbridge Island. I get home at like 4 a.m. And then I have to wake up at 7 to go to work. And so the whole point of it was I was so passionate about this speech to these, 80 Mary Kay women that it didn't matter what mountains I had to overcome, how much sleep I had to miss. I was so passionate about the subject matter of creating your own destiny that I was willing to speak for free. And that's the answer to that question. You have to be so passionate about your subject matter that you're willing to speak, coach, consult, and write on that subject matter for free. And if you're willing to do that, that's what you should write your book about.
The joy of speaking your message is the gift, basically, is your gift. You need to do that. If you don't have that intrinsic value, that intrinsic drive, that fuel, there's no point. You're going to be miserable. You're going to be absolutely miserable. You might be, maybe you make some money out of it, but you might be miserable. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. That's terrible. So that's wonderful that you've found that passion, that drive, that motivation, and you're able to influence so many people. I think that is so powerful. It's such a powerful force. I think that's why people are drawn to you too. You have such a positive outlet. Your energy is so high, and not only is it good for you, man, it's good for everybody. And people feed off of that. I've heard negativity is a cancer. Yeah, well, positivity is a complete opposite. That's a healing factor that can take people from a bad place, bring them out in the light. They can do what they want to do. As you said, one of the more powerful stories you said was brought someone back from the darkest place in their life. They were going to take their own life. Now they're going to change themselves because they saw and took your message and just it touched them in a way that they'd never been thought about before. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. So
to kind of go piggyback on that, I've been on a spiritual awakening journey as a Christian these last 12 years. So I guess I would call myself a spiritual Christian. And one of my mentors is a healer, and he has taught me the power of unconditional love. And he says this, Dr. Michael Gross's quote says that nothing negative can reside in the frequency, energy, and vibration of pure unconditional love. So be unconditional love. And I realize as an author, as a speaker, as a coach, that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to bring in God's love energy into my heart and soul, share that with the world without like proselytizing or whatever, yelling and screaming at people on a corner. But I'm just trying to help people understand that there is a better way. And that better way is love and joy and peace and harmony and ease, as opposed to pain, adversity, struggle, anxiety, and fear. And the problem is, as a personal growth and development, you become what you think about. So if you think about pain and anxiety and fear, then that's what your life, magnifies, and that's what you manifest. But if you think about love and joy and peace and harmony, then you bring that into your life. And when you bring that into your life, you're in a position where you're able to do more and serve more and love more. So my soul level mission and goal that I've just realized in the last 5 years is to love, serve, heal, and inspire. And I do that as an author, speaker, coach, and entrepreneur.
That's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So we're about close to out of time here, but I want you to tell everyone where can we get a copy of Creating Your Own Destiny and the other books you have authored?
Well, I tell you what, I was a self-published author for 10 years, and then I sold the rights to John Wiley and Sons in New York for 2 of my books. And so I can't even get those books. I have to buy my own books from Amazon.com and then resell them if I want to do it that way. So the best place to get a copy of Creating Your Own Destiny or The Affluent Entrepreneur or by Boy Entrepreneur is just go to Amazon.com, and then you can type in Patrick Snow, or you can type in those titles, and then you can buy them direct from there. And then at some point, if I run across you somewhere in the world, I'll sign them. I'm sure they're going to be unsigned copies, but that's the best place to get it. However, as a writing, publishing, book marketing coach, I'm always teaching my clients, yes, get the global book distribution, get set up with Amazon, but don't focus on those sales because you might not make a whole lot of money. Sell your books direct from your own website. And unfortunately, I can't do that anymore because I sold the rights. But yeah, Amazon's the best place to get a copy of my book.
Okay. And then as a speaker and coach, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I love teaching people how to write and publish a book, how to turn it into a bestseller, how to become a professional speaker, how to succeed in the business of coaching. So I coach in all of those areas. So if anybody's interested in a complimentary, no obligation, 60-minute consultation by Zoom, by phone, or in person if geographically possible, the best way to reach me is send me a text on my private cell phone number. And that number is 206-310-1200. Again, that's 206-310-1200. Give me your name and your time zone, and I will reply back to you. And we'll schedule a time, and let me know that you heard from me, from Ryan Oliver, on this fantastic podcast, and that'll be great.
Awesome. Patrick, thank you so much for coming on today and taking the time out of your busy schedule. I'm honored to have you on here as a wonderful person, great author, wonderful speaker and coach, and my personal publishing coach as well. So I really appreciate you on here and everything you have done so far, and I look forward to other great things you do.
Well, thank you. And if those of you want to find me online, you can go to becomingabestsellingauthor.com, becomingabestsellingauthor.com. And I challenge you to soul search for your innermost passions and then transform those passions into your book. Because if not you, then who? If not this, then what? If not here, then where? If not now, then when? I believe in you. I challenge you to dream, plan, execute, and soar, and you will become the creator of your own destiny. Thank you so very much, Ryan. It was a pleasure to be here.
It was a pleasure to have you. And everyone, take care.
Are you an author? Do you know someone who is? If so, then message me, Ryan Oliver, at ryanmoliver.com to set up a free appointment to discuss being showcased on the Mighty Books podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Mighty Books YouTube channel and share the link to this and more episodes with your friends and family. Thanks for listening. So long for now. Stay mighty and keep reading.